gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
There are houses where the walls don't hold memories, they hold impact. Every slammed door sounded like thunder rolling through a child's ribs. Every shattered plate became shrapnel that buried itself beneath the skin where nobody could see it. He learned young that survival was not a heroic thing. Sometimes it was just becoming quiet enough to disappear while chaos stomped through the hallway, like a drunk giant looking for something else to break. Children from homes like this grow crooked in invisible ways. They become experts at reading weather in human faces, tracking danger, the twitch of a jaw, or the silence between words, carrying their nervous systems like overloaded electrical wires sparking behind their eyes. And adulthood comes cruelly for them, because the body may leave the battlefield, but the battlefield rarely leaves the body. It follows them into marriages, into empty apartments, into sleepless nights, where even love feels like standing too close to a fire. People called him strong because they never saw the little boy still trapped inside of him, standing barefoot in the ruins, trying to understand why home felt more like a battlefield than a sanctuary. Trauma is strange that way. It doesn't always leave bruises you can point to. Sometimes it hides beneath ambition, anger, addiction, or the desperate need to be needed. And yet somewhere beneath the scars, beneath the wreckage of the noise, that child still carried a small flicker of light, the stubborn belief that surviving the darkness meant he never meant to become it. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to when we're up to it. So I've been waiting for this one for a while. I really have, because there's some interesting points to your story, and a lot of your story has a lot of parallels with the way I grew up. Not only that, but then you get into your police career, which is a whole other thing. And tonight we welcome Dave Velasquez to talk about the suffering of survival. Now, you have proven that survival is just not an event. It's a lifelong process. Thank you very much for flying all this way from Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yes, thank you. I'm honored to be here. I'm very blessed, so I appreciate even the time.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about because I've been out there and I know the area somewhat, and it's going to be an interesting one. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the guys over at Toyota Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car and you're in the New York, New Jersey area, go to ToyotaHackensack.com. Let them find you a car, but also tell them the Suffering Podcast sent you. Then I need you to go over to thesufferingpodcast.com, get yourself some Dented Ace coffee. 100% of the proceeds go to Dented Development Project, which helps repair dents caused by suffering in first responders, veterans, and their families. And it's a wonderful cup of coffee. I just had mine on the way in here. So, Dave, you've watched a couple episodes, and each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Twin Flames. I was like, hey, Twin Cities? All right, we're game. So you've been through so much. Okay, and you've overcome a lot. Mm-hmm. So one thing I know about challenges is challenges never stop meeting us face to face.
Correct.
So if you had to think about your life today, what are your biggest challenges right now?
You know, the hardest part I thought about in my life would be restarting after ending my career at 38 years old, especially since I was in that career for just shy of 17 years. I thought I was on the path to retirement. I had done something that nobody had done in my family. Little did I know that there's still a lot of work to be done. And even as I rebuild and I have all of these positives going in my life, I still am trying to hone in on what direction my path leads. I don't feel that I'm off of my path. I feel I'm still on my path, always on my path. All of us are. It's just, where is it headed? And so now it's... what do I do with the things that I talk about with my life and mental health, and just trying to be resilient when life throws you curveballs, which it never seems to stop.
I had this line. I used to do these short little videos when the podcast first started, and one of the things I said was, you know, what do you do when life throws you curveballs? And I turned to the camera and I said, you learn to hit the fucking curveball.
Right.
So, you know, my challenges have they're different than they were, say, 15 years ago. But the biggest challenge that I overcome today is trying to let go of the damaging stuff from my past. I was a big asshole at one point in my life, especially after my shooting. I became a gigantic asshole, and I still pay the price to them internally. I don't think really too many people hold me accountable for them, but I hold myself accountable for them. So my challenges today are letting go of the negative feelings when it comes to the things that I did in the past, and trying to learn from each experience and each bad behavior I did so I don't replicate it. Any type of suffering, I say it at the end of every episode, suffering is the best teacher I've ever had in my life. If my suffering cannot teach me on how to be a better person, it is a wasted experience. So my biggest challenge today is, and it will forever be, to let go of those negative experiences from my past and use them as fuel and to fan the flames of my future.
I like it. And it's funny that you say that, because I have a therapist back at home who tells me ad nauseum to let go of the things that don't serve you.
But everything serves us. That's the point of that. Everything serves us.
Right. And it's choosing to let go of the things that don't serve you well, or in a positive sense, or to dwell on that. And that is probably one of the hardest jobs I will always have.
You second guess your behaviors because you're looking at things, everybody will ask me when I talk about my suicide attempts, they're like, weren't you thinking of your family? Weren't you thinking of your kids? I'm like, yeah, I was thinking of that, but I was in a dark place and they'd be better off without me and all those things. So the decision-making process, it evolves over time, and how you thought then is not the way you think now. You're looking at it through rational eyes. Everybody who judges that moment in my life thinks about it with a rational mind. And I got to tell you, my mind was not rational back then at all. So Twin Flame, thank you so much for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions and we will try to get them on the air. So Dave, God, where do we start? Where do we start? Do we start with talking about Austin, Minnesota, Spamtown, USA, my favorite place in the world, home of the Hormel Company, Spam banners on every light post going through that town, and it's a beautiful, quaint little town.
It is. It's actually very nice. It's and we talked about this before we went on, that southern Minnesota is great.
Mm-hmm. Western Minnesota, not so much.
Yeah, the Dakotas, again, like I told you earlier, you can watch a dog run away for 2 weeks.
So you were a Brooklyn Park officer, and here's what I remember about Minneapolis, St. Paul. You drive through Minneapolis, St. Paul, you hit Brooklyn Park, and after Brooklyn Park, close your eyes, and that is Western Minnesota.
Yep.
Interactions with sexual assault victims are on the rise, yet training remains scarce.
Every day, someone finds the courage to say the words they've been holding in for years.
And every day, someone is standing on the other side of that moment. The question is,
will they know what to do next?
Trauma doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't look like the way we expect.
It doesn't respond to force. It responds to understanding.
Sherry Ulsip, survivor turned global trauma expert.
Kevin Donaldson, retired law enforcement leader and advocate for real change. Together, we bridge a gap most people never see.
We train officers. We educate communities.
We change how first responders listen, question, and lead. Because the first response can shape a lifetime.
This isn't a theory.
This is lived experience meeting leadership. And when compassion replaces confusion, healing begins.
Sherry Ulsop and Kevin Donaldson, changing the way we respond so survivors are heard.
There is nothing.
Yeah, 94 is going to take you all the way to Fargo, and you're not really going to see much.
Where everybody says, don't you know?
Yeah,
That's all they know how to say out there.
Yeah, and I just did it, the oh yeah, you betcha, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing about that area, especially the western part of Minnesota and Fargo and Bismarck and in the Dakotas, the mentality is so much different out there. You're in the East Coast now. Everything is go, 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 go. How much money can I earn? Let me get ahead. It's this constant rat race.
Mm-hmm.
Out there, here's what I found. As long as you have enough money to pay for your truck, to pay for your house, and feed your family, you're good. You're good. And Some people will take that for lack of motivation. I always thought it was a beautiful and simple way to live your life because those are the things that matter. So I like that mentality out there.
Yeah, and you find a lot of it. And it's not to say that anybody isn't out there trying to make a gainful living or better themselves every day, because they are. It's just what they choose to invest that in is at home. And oftentimes that gets missed.
Yeah, and out here it especially gets missed. You know, I'm busier now than when I was an officer, and unfortunately, my family pays the price for that because I'm not home as much, or I'm traveling, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I long for that simple life.
Yeah.
It's very desirable, and once you've experienced it, it kind of never leaves you.
Yeah.
So why don't you give our audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you grew up?
Yeah. So I'm Minnesota born and bred, been there my entire life. My birth parents, I call them that for a reason. My birth parents divorced when I was quite young, and so I don't really have any lasting memories of them together. I primarily lived with my birth mom growing up, and we bounced around everywhere. Both of my parents suffered from addiction, and that carried on into my childhood.
What form of addiction?
For my birth dad, the only thing I know is alcohol. I don't know too much about him to know anything different. For my mom, it was drugs, and she got into it pretty hard. And so, to give you an idea of how unstable that was, during K through 12, I went to 13 different schools.
Whoa! So you were short on friends, and the teachers aren't following what's going on at home.
Correct.
Yeah, because they don't know you enough.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was never established anywhere. So it was really just a survival game for me to get through every day, one at a time. And then once I was able to manage that myself, I mean, I did have some help along the way. I was informally adopted when I was 15.
Yeah, but by 15, you're already imprinted.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything is just, survival mode. You're really doing things to. I tell people that growing up, a lot of what I did and the way that I acted and the way that I probably presented to a lot of people was to prevent myself from being a victim. Because when you are out in that world and in the world of, I ran the streets, I did all kinds of things.
How'd you treat other kids?
I really latched onto friends.
Yeah.
Because that was all I had.
The reason I ask that is because coming from a survival situation where your nervous system is constantly, it's hyper, it's excited, it never calms down, it's chaotic. There's two ways it can go. Like, I grew up very similar to you, but not with the addiction stuff, but just unstable. I presented as a bully because I had no control at home. So that was my form of control. I've watched it go the other way, the same way you were, where you latch on to friends. They become your adjunct family.
I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a bully. I would say maybe, if anything, I was probably the one that was bullied, only because I didn't really let those folks in. Because to me, they weren't harmful. What was harmful was everything I had to deal with at home. And, one of the lasting memories I have of my childhood, and it kind of encompasses how my environment was, but there was so much trauma and abuse. I remember walking out into the living room, dining room area of the apartment that my birth mom and I lived in at the time, and her boyfriend was over at that time, and they had gotten into a domestic argument. And so I walk out there, I'm 11, 12 years old, somewhere around there. And he's got her against the wall by the neck. Her tiptoes are hardly touching the ground. So even if she had a base, she wasn't able to. And that was my environment, and having her drug dealers in the home while I was there, and just, I didn't want to be there. So when I say I latched onto Friends, it was because it was an escape from what my reality was.
I'll bet you can walk into any room and feel the temperature of the room.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing what it teaches you.
It teaches, so survival skills as a child, they translate real well to what you did in the second portion of your life, in the second act. But as a child, that's all you know. You learn when to stay quiet, when to speak up, when somebody's pissed, when you need to stay small, all these different things about this household that you're in, because you don't know any other way. And the sad part is are you a father?
I am.
You're okay. The sad part is when you look at your child, like, you're responsible for that child, and you're responsible for them trying to grow up and be good human beings. And it happens all too frequently that parents of children don't deserve those children.
Right.
And that's a sad thing to say.
It is. And one of the more recent episodes I think I listened to as I was prepping to just get myself ready, you were having a conversation with somebody and you had talked about maturity and
I have none.
And being mature enough to, have kids. And I laughed at that because I'm right there with you. If anybody really knows and knows my story and how my life has really gone, they'd be like, you brought kids into this world?
Yeah, but what you're trying to do, is be the person that you needed the most, right? Because that's what I try to do with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be the person, whether it's the proper coach or or somebody teaching them a proper life lesson, or not coming down on them when they make mistakes, because kids are always going to make mistakes. You're trying to break that wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You're not only trying to break the wheel, you're trying to crush the wheel, because too many parents who grew up in that situation, the wheel just keeps spinning around and around. So, when you were in that environment, feeling unsafe, did it present physically in any way?
It did. It comes out in a lot of different ways. It comes out in how you take care of yourself, and which sounds silly, because you don't think about your kids at 10, 11, 12 years old taking care of themselves. Like, you should be on a diet plan, you should do this, right? But it was, if you needed to eat, I vividly remember a time in my life where if I needed to eat or I wanted a snack or something that was fulfilling at the time, but I didn't want to go home to get it, you went to the 7-Eleven up the street and you stole it. It's, you look back on it, like, God, how you never got caught for any of that stuff is mind-blowing, but that's just how it was. And you take a lot of that, a lot of those experiences I carry on now, and I just try to break that universal cycle to show my kids that you can make really dumb decisions, but be on top in the end, as long as you choose to learn from them.
That's the big thing, you need to get, but it was a different time. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 42.
You're 42. So, I'm 51 and it was a different time. If I got caught by the cops doing something when I was younger, they'd throw me a little beating. All right, nothing too severe, but they'd let me get the message. Mm-hmm. The real asshole cops would take me home to my parents. They were the asshole. I'm like, you're a dick, dude. I mean, can't you just hit me in the head or something? And sometimes when they were a little heavy-handed, you learned certain things. You learned that, okay, there's consequences to everything, because you're living in a household where it seems like your mother really is, what was her drug, by the way?
Crack, primarily. Crack. Yeah.
So she's living in a consequence-free environment. She's around a little kid. She's doing drugs, not presenting the best behavior. But were there any moments that your mother of lucidity with her?
As I've processed this through all kinds of therapy, I think what she was doing was the best that she could with what she had at the time. And I think that she was trying to survive herself. She went from having a decent job. She worked for the state of Minnesota, had everything together, but, ended up losing all of it. I mean, I remember even we had a car repoed when I was younger because she really lost everything because of addiction. And it just led to where we bounced around, and she wasn't really good at picking her partners.
Well,
Not only
abuse begets abuse, you know?
right, not only would they abuse her, but depending on the person, it would leak down to me. And you know, it's shocking for folks when I tell them that some of my earliest childhood memories of people actually loving me and standing up for me were, one guy in particular was one of her primary dealers. Because if abuse was ever brought up and he found out about it, I mean, I witnessed what he did to one of her boyfriends because he abused me. And it wasn't pretty.
But just because he's a bad guy doesn't make him a bad guy.
The battles we fight are hard and taxing on the soul. Fighting a battle that seems impossible to win. The stressful calls that give us wounds that cannot be seen.
These moments leave scars. They leave dents. Sometimes we just need to sit and talk over coffee.
Finding a moment of peace in the comfort of decompression with those whom you share difficulties. Sharing moments with those who are the only ones who understand. Our peace comes in the quiet moments we can share with our brothers and sisters.
It's just a moment to sit, listen, and let it out. We may be dented, but we are not broken. The Suffering Podcast, Dented Ace Coffee, was created to bring the peace to the protectors. Dented Ace Coffee is a tribute to my brother Mike Falaise and all the others who couldn't find their peace. 100% of the proceeds will go directly to Dented Development Project so that we can begin to repair the dents caused by suffering in veterans, first responders, and their families. The Suffering Podcast's Dented Ace Coffee. Get yours today by visiting thesufferingpodcast.com. So just because your lot in life says you need to be one thing doesn't necessarily mean that they are that thing 24/7.
Right.
So, I mean, at least you had something. You had some form of ability. And the first time somebody stuck up for you, I bet you you were to the moon.
I was. It finally gave me a sense that I wasn't really doing it by myself, that somebody was actually paying attention. And it's not to say that my mom wasn't, but in that capacity, to have somebody stand up for you like that, for how ugly maybe it was at the time, was gratifying.
What were the normal things in your life? Sports? Anything like that? Was there any bastion of stability there?
There was. So early on,
Because you're a big guy, man. You got to play football. It's like a rule.
that was one thing I couldn't get into. Everything was so unstable. When I was 5, my mom approached me and said, give you 2 options, bowling or hockey. At 5 years old, I was able to say, she's full of shit because we can't afford hockey. I promise that ain't happening. So I chose bowling because I knew that was the safe bet, and I didn't know any different. And so I picked that up. And I still bowl to this day. It is an outlet for me. It is something
It's fun, too.
Yeah, and I've been able to do it on some pretty high levels. It's great. I played baseball when I was a kid. I still play softball competitively in my old age. My wife screams at me because she thinks I'm not built for that, made of glass, which in some aspects she's right. But in any case, so yeah, bowling and baseball were really the 2 things that I latched onto because it was a mental escape.
So I want to point something out here, and I might make you feel a little self-conscious when I tell you this stuff. So I am a student of human behavior. I love watching how people react when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're angry, when they're fearful, all different types of emotions, and everybody presents. I'm a poker player too. I love playing poker. So I look at poker tells. I know your childhood is something you're still trying to reconcile with. And tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm full of shit. When you're talking about your childhood, you're looking down, you're trying, it's not that you're searching for words, right? So you were a police officer, and what do you learn? What is the first thing you learn as a police officer? Don't trust anybody that doesn't look you in the eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're telling something very difficult, and you're not looking at people in the eyes. I do it when I talk about my childhood. When I go out and I speak and stuff, and I talk about my childhood, you'll see me look down, and it's not something, and it's something I try to correct.
Right.
And I can't, because that's the feeling that I have inside.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not here to try to make you feel uncomfortable, but I will bet you've done that for most part of your life. If a teacher asks you, hey, what'd you do at home last night? Well, you know, I went in my room, and, you know, you probably did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the things as adults we need to get better at. We need to identify that stuff. But your childhood gives you more power than you realize. So I will bet you throughout your life, you were able to identify when a kid was being mistreated at home.
Oh, absolutely. The amount of skills that carried into police work
Oh my God,
were
it's crazy.
insurmountable.
So there's a profile of a cop, and I heard this from a woman named Stephanie Samuels. Stephanie Samuels started, you ever heard of Cop Line?
I have.
All right, so she started Cop Line.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and she's a friend of mine. She's a New Jersey therapist. And first time I got on the phone with her, she says, here's the profile of a cop. Born in chaos, lives in chaos, can't live without chaos. When chaos isn't present, they create chaos. And usually were active as a child, sports, things like that. And all those, we talked about this earlier, all those skills that you learned, you know, how to read a room, how to take a hit, you know, how to be tough, when to talk, when not to talk, you know, just reading people, having instincts that you don't know where you got them from. They were all learned from your childhood. And while your childhood does not sound like a fun event, it probably made you a really good cop.
I got a lot of comments over my career about different things that we did, or different calls that we would go to, where they, you know, folks would say, have you ever thought about being on like our negotiations team or this or that? Because people seem to gravitate towards you. And when you do that, I always brush it off and just say, it just comes natural. I mean, it does. I'm not lying to them. I'm not.
But you trained for it.
Right. But I can empathize with a lot of the folks that I encountered because I was living their life.
You can more than empathize. You can sympathize. Empathy, yes. Listen, if you broke your arm, I can empathize with you. But if I've never broken my arm, I really don't know what you're feeling.
Right.
If you see somebody who is in an abusive situation, you can actually sympathize with them because you've been there.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to get to your police career because I want to know how the hell, like Minneapolis, St. Paul, that's a rough area. But you didn't start there, right?
I did not. Nope. So I graduated college in 2005, and I got my first job within 6 months out of school.
Was it being a police officer?
Yes.
So was that your career path? Is that something you always wanted to do?
It was. And it was what I wanted to do simply because it was one thing I could afford.
Mm.
And when I was deciding my path, I had one of two ways to go. I could be a cop, or I could be a criminal. And you know, the police were in our neighborhood all the time, and especially one of the apartment complexes that I grew up in. And it was just something that I thought was interesting because it was so different from what I knew. And so I got into Police Explorers pretty early, and which Police Explorers actually helped in two facets. Not only did I end up becoming a police officer, but amidst all of the chaos that was my childhood, I had met and become friends with someone whose family got a hold of what my growing up situation was like, to the point where they had offered me to live with them. And of course I turned them down because what I knew was comfortable. What's wrong? You know, I know my life doesn't look like yours, but it's what I know. And then the last week of my sophomore year of high school, I came home to where we were living at the time with one of my mom's boyfriends, and she was gone.
Your mom was gone.
Gone. Her shit's gone. Just gone. She up and left.
Oh my God.
No words, no nothing. And so I had called this friend that I had made through Explorers and just asked if he wanted to hang out, thinking if I kill some time, I can at least get out of here. And when I come back, hopefully things will have resolved itself. And after I had made that call, that family had said, "Now it's not an option. You're coming with us."
Did you ever find out where your mom went?
No, we never really talked about it. I didn't hear from her for about a month after that.
God. My God. Just pull a disappearing act.
Yeah.
Your mother's the greatest magician on the planet.
Right.
Yeah. So you get this job. Where'd you first get hired?
I first got hired in a city called Cottage Grove, so South Metro, and they are unique in that they are a police paramedic agency. So you get hired, obviously, as a police officer, but you can commit to being a police paramedic.
It's a good way to share services.
Yeah. There's actually still a couple of agencies, as far as I know, that are still operating under that, Cottage Grove included. But I realized pretty early that the paramedic piece was not for me. So...
Yeah, we hand our shit off to them, man. We don't want to.
Right.
I've been pumping on somebody's chest for 5 minutes. I'm sweating. It's your turn now.
It's a lot easier to grab the doors and shut them and then let them do their thing. So I did some non-sworn work prior to getting hired in Cottage Grove. And one of those was a community service officer in Brooklyn Park. And so after I was with Cottage Grove for a couple of years...
Home of Jesse Ventura.
Yes, they were hiring, and I said, "Hey, why not?" So
Now he lives down in the Baja.
Yeah, oh yeah.
In the Baja.
He's I tell you, that guy's something. But it's Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, listen, you got to give him a little grace.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
He's Jesse the Body.
Yeah. Ended up going back to Brooklyn Park. They hired me, which thankfully they did, because I had also applied for Minneapolis at that time. But they didn't give me a job right away, or Brooklyn Park offered me first, which at the time people actually wanted to be the police. So
Yeah.
You needed to take what was given to you, or you risked losing it. And thankfully I did, because that class, if I would have gotten hired in Minneapolis, ended up getting laid off. A lot of them got their jobs back eventually, but I avoided that. So then I went to Brooklyn Park, and I was there from 2008 to 2014. In 2014, Minneapolis had run a lateral academy, which is something that they hadn't done in years. They had done it many years prior, but they took in a lot of cops from Detroit. I don't know if I need to really go into how that turned out for them.
From what I know of Brooklyn Park, it's a nice little medium-sized town, decent area, good families. You know, that's what I know about Brooklyn Park. I could be wrong. Now you're moving into the jungle. Like it's like the Wild West in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Don't discredit Brooklyn Park too much.
Yeah.
They have always called, so there's 5 police precincts in Minneapolis. They refer to Brooklyn Park as the 6th precinct. So it has its fair share. But yeah, and even when I had made that transition from Brooklyn Park to Minneapolis, some of my friends are saying, "What, you're not busy enough? You need more." And it wasn't just I didn't need more. It was just more of an opportunity in a larger department to be able to move, hopefully, where I wanted to go without the restrictions of a smaller town.
When you're in a small department, my department was 28 person, fully staffed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so if they don't like you, there's nowhere you're going. I don't care how good a test taker or how good an interviewer, you're just stuck where you are, and you're very visible. In a larger department, they always tell you in the academy, don't be first, don't be last, sort of stay in the middle because you're least visible in there. That's what you can do inside a bigger department. So you can be as ambitious as you want to be, or you can be as small as you want to be.
Right.
So there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is when I had moved to Brooklyn Park, I went through an academy with them. But in order to go to Minneapolis, I would have to do it again. And I told myself, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it before I'm 30, because there's no way in hell you're getting me to do another academy after that. Done enough. I'm good. So I made the leap, and it was good for me at the time. It was, I was improving myself, and it was building up all of this inner confidence that I was actually going somewhere.
Well, if you think about it on the surface, you're taking control of your life. You have control where you go, what you do. You're making money. You can eat. You have complete control over your life. Think about where you came from.
Right.
You had none. So now all of a sudden you're feeling pretty good, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. A huge ego boost, right?
Mm-hmm.
To just say, look at, I have turned shit into fertilizer, and I've grown with it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I transitioned to Minneapolis in September of 2014.
You had an interesting partner too.
Really did.
So Minnesota has been in the news recently. It was in the news a lot in the early 2020s. But you work with one notorious individual.
I did. After I had completed the academy and got placed, I was placed in the 5th Police Precinct, and was having the time of my life, place where I was at. My son was born. There were some issues, some controversy. I ended up getting transferred to the 3rd Precinct. And when I was transferred, I was accepted into a car with Derek Chauvin.
So what was he like as a partner?
I tell you what.
Everybody shits on him, so I mean,
you're right.
I don't believe in anybody's. I don't believe there's too many Dr. Evils in this world that you're evil 24/7. So I'm sure he had some. I'm not excusing what he did, but there's some things that are probably decent about him.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I tell everybody is Derek was a guy that I know I'm not the only one to have done this, but when you would go to some of those lower priority calls, you'd have to walk out on him in a call because he would talk forever with folks. And he would talk, and you're like, there's like 25 emergency calls impending. We should probably wrap this up. But he was a helper. It was hard to watch how he was painted, because what I know Derek of is that person that he really was that helper, and almost to a fault, right? You don't typically leave your partner hanging on a call by himself, but if they're taking a report call and it's starting to really drag on, you're like, come on, man, we got to go.
Did you see anything that would lead you to believe that he's heavy-handed in any way?
No. I could list easily 5 names. Obviously, I'm not going to, but I could easily list 5 names right now off the top of my head of folks that I would have guaranteed they would have been in his position long before him. And it's not that I didn't trust Derek. Of course I trusted Derek with my life. I wouldn't have sat in a car 6 inches from them for 10 hours a day if I didn't. But he wasn't the heavy-handed type. Everybody, this, in the police world, everybody does things differently. There are some people I knew I dreaded going into calls with because their mouth was going to get us into something that we didn't want to be in. or just their demeanor, the way that they talked with folks.
There was people in my department too where, I had this move though. I knew who the heavy-handed people were, right? I knew that when their adrenaline's pumping, bad shit could happen. So my move as a more senior guy is, if we were locking somebody up, I would immediately put the handcuffs on them. And you hear me say it several times on camera. Cuffs are on them, off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say it because I'm trying to protect myself, but I'm also trying to protect them from doing something stupid.
Right.
And that was the whole part of it. When that whole thing went down, you knowing him, you obviously weren't his partner at that particular moment. Were you working that day?
I was not.
But you heard about it. Obviously, everybody heard about it. What was your reaction knowing that this is a guy who you rode with for X amount of years?
So I remember this vividly. We are at the 6-year anniversary, actually, as you and I are speaking here. But so my now wife and I began dating 5 days prior to George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. And it was one of the first times I was staying over at her townhome that she had at the time. And we see the news clip and she's like, "What does that mean for you?" I guess we're going to find out, but I don't know. I didn't know any of the circumstances. None of us really did. We weren't sure where this was going to turn. Did we anticipate that it was going to turn into what it did? Absolutely not.
But unfortunately, you being on the same department, in the same precinct as him, you are going to be judged based off his actions.
Absolutely.
And he could do, did you ever hear the term, man builds 1,000 bridges but sucks one dick? He's a cocksucker. And that's sort of what happened, what you're telling me with him. It sounds like he was a decent cop,
Mm-hmm.
makes one error. I don't even know if it was an error. I mean, there's controversy on that stuff, but that's not for me to say, but makes one very public mistake, and that is how he is judged, but a lot of that's going to rub off on you.
It does. So much so, it's been a part of my life that I had to hold silent for a lot of years, which contributed to a lot of my own personal downfall, because it's just something that no matter what you tell anybody, and how you put it in that analogy is great, because I tell people it doesn't matter if we were out saving babies and kissing nuns prior to that day.
Depends on if you use tongue.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's
that.
Right. Strong distinction. But nobody's going to see me for anything that I have to say. They're only going to see me for that incident.
Well, look at the guys who surrounded him. And they just did I just saw an article post about one of the officers who was there standing around. And I wanted to get your take on that, because police officers, not only are we there to protect the public, but we're there to protect the public from those we work with as well, because you've been on those hot calls, listen, the juices get flowing and the bonus shots and all that stuff. We all know that stuff happens. They took it right up the rear end with that stuff. But what is the price of inaction?
So I know who you're talking about, and
The Asian guy.
Yeah, Tao. Yeah. So another curveball is I've spent hours in a car with Tao as well. Mm. Him and I have been partnered up a few times. And so what he was doing wasn't him being lazy, but of course you can take any cell phone video. I mean, you and I could take a video of us just sitting here talking, and we could spin it 100 different ways.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on how we wanted to portray it to the media.
Being in media, watch what I do with all these clips.
Right. So, it was gathering so much attention that Tao was essentially just trying to keep everyone from encroaching on what the task at hand was for the officers dealing with George Floyd at the time. And I'm just as guilty as Tao was, if you would consider him guilty, because when people are when the folks are hands-on, you need to keep them safe also, so that doesn't present a different level of danger to not only just the cops, but to whoever it is that they're dealing with at the time.
And I'm not getting into I want to be very clear about this. I'm not getting into the minutia of what he did, because you could go either way depending on what frame of mind you are or what evidence you look at. I'm looking at this happened. This is fact. This is what happened. These are the consequences to all that stuff. But can you imagine, like, this poor guy shows up to work? I feel for these guys. And I said this while the trial was going on. I said, I feel for these guys here because they were just there. Like, they didn't do anything. That's part of the problem. They didn't do anything. But they just showed up to work that day. And this happened, and now all of a sudden they're front page news. This poor he got put in jail, right?
Yeah, he did prison time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For inaction, which, as a police officer, listen, we're held to a higher standard. I get that, and I understand that. I've sat in front of people who hold that, But the thing I don't like is Minneapolis, St. Paul. They held this George Floyd out. He didn't deserve to die, okay? But they held him up as a hero. He was not a hero. And I am unequivocally, I will take that one to the grave. He was not a hero. He's not a guy to put up for martyrdom.
Right. And I agree with you. And I'm also the first person to agree with you in the fact that nobody deserves death, right? It really doesn't matter. Nobody deserves to die. And the way that they portrayed it was much like that. What those officers did was they did the opposite of kissing nuns and saving babies, is that they were killing them too.
They were like a hit squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't the case at all. I still have the paper manual that we were given in the police precinct for the same maneuver Derek used that day. Mm-hmm. It was trained.
There was a problem when they went to sentence him that I took issue with. Whether you believe he was guilty or whether he wasn't guilty, he's still governed by the law of the United States of America.
Right.
And they gave him a sentence that was above what the standard was for that offense. Okay, I've worked on murder cases. I've worked on all different types of cases, and okay, he murdered his girlfriend. Maximum sentence is 20 years, whatever it may be, wherever you are.
Yep.
Well, for his, I forget what it was, but he got that plus because it was such a high profile thing that it almost, you're like, well, now you're not judging him by the law. You're judging him by feelings. Okay. The law is supposed to be blind. That's what the little statue's for.
Yep.
And that was the problem that I had with that. They judged him harsher than the law allows. So I don't understand why I do understand why they did it, but still, I mean, you can't do that stuff.
Well, it's hard to process, but then, you also think about why they've had such an issue with retention and hiring, because that could have been any one of us. That could have been me. Mm-hmm. Who in their right mind would want to do that?
And you put on the front page of every newspaper? Forget it.
It's one thing, even for that to happen, their lives were ruined from the start. But then you start sentencing people to prison. Derek obviously has a gajillion years to do. He's already been stabbed and almost lost his life in there. But
yeah, he's got to be a popular person in there.
Well, I can only imagine. But but then there's this outcry like, oh, nobody wants to be the cop, the police anymore. Well, that's common sense. Who would? There isn't any amount of money that would make me want to do that.
Well, our justice system is broken from the get-go, right? So I'll give you a prime example. I have a friend of mine, Seth Ferranti. He's a movie director. He was the LSD kingpin of that seat that you're sitting in.
Okay.
He was the LSD kingpin of the Northeast. He sold a lot of LSD. When he was caught, he wasn't caught with one tab of LSD. He was given 25 years. He did 21.
Wow.
Okay, he did the whole bit. The guy who shot at me and my partner in my shooting, attempted murder twice on a police officer, got 6 years, did 4. All right, so Seth was a first-time nonviolent offender. This guy was a violent offender who had a criminal past. You know, the system is broken no matter what. Now, after this whole debacle went down, and you're like, oh my God, I got to, and now you're dealing with the aftermath of somebody else's action. I always say, I don't care what you do, it's just as long as your bad decisions don't fall on my head. Well, this decision, good, bad, or indifferent, however you look at it, had to fall on your head. So now you're on high alert.
And it did. It fell on a lot of our heads. And so it obviously gained traction right away. And it evolved into just complete chaos. And some people like to even call it political chaos, because we're not creating change, we're just creating chaos. And so, yeah, so then it fell on a lot of us, and me included. And tomorrow is the actual 6-year anniversary of the Precinct takeover. And I was one of the officers that was inside of that building when it was taken over and set on fire with the unrest.
So it's, again, we're all judged by our lowest common denominator. You know, if you pick a group of people, whatever it may be, pick a race, pick a job, whatever it is. You have a bad experience with a lawyer, all lawyers are scumbags. You have a bad experience with a cop, all cops are scumbags. We have a tendency to do that. Like I make fun of Puerto Ricans all the time, all right? But guess what? That Puerto Rican sitting on the other side of that booth is one of my best friends in the world. Mm-hmm. So if I judge all Puerto Ricans by him, well, guess what? All Puerto Ricans are great. But I know that's not true.
Right.
All right? But if I had a negative experience with him, guess what? By default, all Puerto Ricans are not good.
Right.
So we have a tendency to do that. Instead of judging the person, we judge the group. You're being judged as a group of police officers, and you're on high alert. I'm sure you're getting death threats constantly. I'm sure people are screaming at you on the street. I'm sure all this stuff's happening. You got a job to do. And how do you do your job? Now you're swimming against the tide. So this police precinct, how did it start?
It seemed to really come out of nowhere. There was obviously the attention where everything with George Floyd happened, but then they wanted to come to the precinct and make a stand, and the city itself just kept allowing it. 10 people turns into 50, 50 turns into 1,000, 1,000 turns into 2, 3 more, as anyone can watch from the videos from all that took place. And it just escalated, and during its escalation, there was never any leadership to sit back and say, hey, it still says police on our patch, we should probably do something. No. Everyone just pandered to it. And it grew into what the world knows it of today. And
you have police officers taking a knee. New York City, you have police officers taking a knee. But here's the thing about the people who pander. Those people, while their actions are front and center and they look good at the time, the regular officers, they never forget that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, what a terrible environment to then move into, because as you and I both know, the police world already has its own built-in chaos. Mm-hmm. You know, I refer to it as the largest adult high school you could ever attend.
Oh, it's much worse than high school. If there's gossip to be told, it's I tell every class I give, I'll walk up to one of the officers and I'll say, and there's always inevitably some non-officers in there, and I'm like, I'm going to teach you something. I'm going to teach you how to give a police officer a lie detector test. You ready? You ready? They're like, yeah. I said, just go up to any officer, just go up to anybody in the department and just say, hey, what's going on? And they will just throw up everything inside of it. It's all this stuff. Oh my God, I got so much to tell you. It's like a dog when you come home. I got so much to tell you. I had the greatest day in the world, and this person's doing this, and this person's doing this. I heard this person's banging this person and this. And it's a giant sewing circle. So yes, they're much worse.
Yeah.
So how did you escape they get into the precinct? You guys are surrounded. You're behind enemy lines. How the hell did you get out?
So we were locked in our fence had gotten chained shut, and one of the more popular videos out there is of one of the squads having to drive through the fence, and we then had to run on foot about 3 blocks to where we were told there's Metro Transit buses there to pick you up, and they're going to take you to our Special Operations Center, which is in a different precinct. So we break out, we run, we get to where they tell us where these buses are supposed to be. There's no buses. 2,000 plus people chasing us down the street.
I saw this. It's called Black Hawk Down. The same
Yeah,
situation, right?
Yeah,
You were
right.
walking out of the Mogadishu Mile.
Yeah, oh yeah. And so a transit supervisor had met us there. He was driving this van, and he's like, yeah, the buses are like 3 minutes behind. And it's like, dude, I don't know that we have 3 minutes, but here we go. You know, hopefully our help knows what they're doing. But the buses do show up, and we get hauled off to our other location. But, you know, as we were driving off, of course, we had to drive past the precinct, just, you know, a little ways away on a bridge that you could see. And it was, I mean, the flames were coming up through the roof. So
It's got to be heartbreaking to watch your house burn.
if you ever want to feel defeated, be the police and not be able to be the police.
So your career, while it was fruitful, you know, it was you become this agent of anti-chaos. Actually goes back into chaos, and your career doesn't quite end the way you want it to.
It does not.
So how's your career end?
So I remained with Minneapolis until August of 21. And I knew that I needed to leave. We'd lost hundreds of officers. It was getting to the point I wasn't recognizing anybody. The morale was not even close to existent. So I went to a suburb in the North Metro. I transferred, and I was taken in by this great agency. And for what it's worth, I had a great experience. However, the damage was already done, and I was already seeing it come out in my life anyways. You know, my first wife left me, probably a common theme. If you interview cops, they have to,
Got to have at least 2.
right, they have to number, right. It's like pancakes, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Don't be ashamed to throw the first one out. My first wife left me on Father's Day of 2019. And so I was already in a tailspin. I was afraid of losing my kids. Minnesota is not a friendly state for dads. It still is not to this day.
Welcome to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel for that. And it's, you know, even a part of the folks that I am trying to reach and help with, you know, my own speaking and talking about my own life story. I like to include dads in that also, because it can be a really shitty time. And so everything wasn't going well to begin with. Now I meet my now wife, who's an angel. I have literally put that woman through hell. And she's still here with me. And we're thriving, and I couldn't be more blessed. But at any rate, I was worried about losing that at the time. Every little shred of positivity that was coming into my life was being ruined somehow. So I transferred jobs, and I was just starting to see my own demise. I didn't want to admit it, but I was seeing my own demise. And so at the agency that I had gone to, my very last day of FTO, I get into a knockdown drag-out with another officer because we went to somebody that, I believe he was autistic and 20, but he was threatening himself with like a personal camping axe. So not like a huge regular axe, just one of them small hatchets, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
And so we get into a fight with him. During that scuffle, I ruin my wrist. Needs to be reconstructed, not once, but twice. And so then I was laid up, and now I'm pouring it on, right? The bad decisions are coming. The self-destructive behavior is coming.
What's an example of self-destructive?
Drinking my feelings.
Feels good at the time.
Right.
It always seems like a good idea at the time. Plus, no great story ever starts with, remember that time I had a salad?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, to give you an example of how things were going, my wife and I were up at the family cabin, and her and I had been talking about dogs. I always have wanted a large dog.
Dog's got to be 50 pounds.
Oh.
To be a dog, it's got to be 50 pounds.
Right. Huge. But I want, you know, like a mastiff, something very, very large. You know, being 6'4", 240, I need something to keep up with me. I go on the AKC website and I'm looking at dogs, and that's all I remember. I was looking at Bernese Mountain Dogs on my phone. I go to sleep. I wake up at 7 a.m. the next morning. My phone's ringing, and it's this Amish guy in Ohio that says, hey, when are you going to come pick up this dog? What dog? You know, the one you paid for last night. And that was kind of my first reality of, this is getting ugly. You know, I don't remember paying for this dog.
Thousands of dollars, probably.
Oh, yeah. At any rate, said dog is now my service dog. But, you know, things just started to go downhill. So in June of 2022, I go to a therapy appointment. I had been seeing somebody for a long time. We really weren't making headway, but it's that game of, you go see a psychologist, then you go to a doctor. They give you prescription medication after prescription medication. When that doesn't work, they give you another one, and you're not even titrated off of this one before you start a new one. And I go to this appointment. A month before said appointment, she had told me, if you don't get your shit together, I'm removing you from service. And my first instinct was to be a cop and say, easy. I walk into people's houses. I walk through life with my best Academy Award winning act. I can get through this. I go into that appointment. It ends at 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm supposed to work that night. And at 2:15 on the drive home, I get an email from the city. You've been removed. Don't show up. You have been removed from service. The psychologist removed him. She said, you're done.
It had nothing to do with your wife. Your wife didn't call?
Mm-mm.
The psychologist said you weren't fit.
Psychologist did. Yep.
Really?
So the therapist I had been seeing for years.
Your own personal therapist remove you from service?
Yeah.
What kind of fucking therapist are you seeing, man? That's a therapist that punch right in the nose. I know it's a blessing in disguise, but still, like, no, I'm here seeing you trying to get better, and you're taking me out of my job.
Right. And it's, you know, and I can't fault her too much, because we were having those conversations. She's like, do you feel like you are able to safely do this? No. And I'm giving her the examples. I'm racing to all of these high priority calls by myself because I don't care what happens. It's like that. It's that passive
suicide.
I don't care what happens.
That's what it is. It's passive suicide.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actively trying to kill yourself, but you're also not actively trying to protect yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, even down to something simple as an alarm call, where instead of doing the tactical approaches and the things that you should do to keep yourself safe, you're just like, let's go. If this is real, we'll find out. Yeah. So now my world really crashes. My retirement was official in September of 2022. I medically retired. So that was a positive because they pay you for that.
But it doesn't heal the hurt.
It doesn't, because even then when I left, I didn't get a thanks. I mean, you don't need a thanks, right? But people go out with retirement parties and that kind of thing, and it's like you get something. I got nothing.
So that's the way that I went out too. All right. And a friend of mine put it to me. One of the guys in therapy put it to me, and he goes, you got guys having a 20, we had to do 25 years.
Okay.
You got guys having a 25-year retirement party. They never did a goddamn thing in their life. Okay. Yet they're getting the gold watch. They're getting the shadow box. They're getting all that good stuff. You actually did something in your life. You actually did something with your career. Didn't end the way you wanted it to, but you did something. They did nothing, and they're getting the party. And there's no justice to that. That's the reality of it. There is no justice to that. But at least you did something. You made a difference in people's lives. That's what counts. So while you didn't get the fanfare, you can still look yourself in the mirror. I know it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help in that situation, but you're removed from it for a few years now.
Right.
You know, so then you go on this, I'm hoping that you start going on this healing journey afterwards.
I did. But the healing journey didn't come easy. So I retired in September of 22. I'm pissed. I'm demoralized, down. I'm actively trying to ruin myself the best way I know how. Right before Thanksgiving in November of 22, so I had been drafting up a plan prior to that. I knew a lot of things. Number one, I wasn't going to do anything around my kids. I wasn't going to do anything at home. I was going to make it really just about me in that moment, if and when I decided to come to that day. So it was a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. My now wife and I had a horseshit day. I'm trying to create problems at home, right? I need to feel better about whatever. I finally get pushed to the edge that day. And so what my plan was, did you ever watch the Ellen show?
Not much of it.
Okay. The only reason I asked that is because 1 month to the day after my experience, she had a DJ on her show.
Oh, yeah, he killed himself. Yeah.
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 That was my plan. I was going to do exactly what he did.
I forget how he did it, though. He had to work with Ellen, so that might have helped out.
Well, and I can't imagine it helped, but he was at home, even said goodbye to his wife and everything, walked out of his house, went a mile or two down the road into a hotel, and blew his brains out inside of a hotel room, to himself. And that's about, I wasn't going to go to a hotel. I was just going to find some secluded place and do that. But we get into this argument, and I had reached that moment. And only folks that go through this will understand. When you hit that moment, you don't think 2 seconds about what's happening. It's just everything that has ever compounded is making it okay for you to act in that moment. So we get into an argument. I'm going to go and leave the house. My gun is in the bedside table next to me, so I grab it. And I couldn't even get uncovered. We were laying in bed at the time. I couldn't even get uncovered to get up and walk out of the house. As soon as I had grabbed my gun and presented, it was holstered, never pointed at, nothing like that. She reacted and called 911. Well, thankfully, that is one of the times I will say, thankfully, I was drunk that day, because you're so slow. Everything is delayed reaction. The police were really fast that day. And I ended up getting arrested, actually. I was never asked once what was transpiring. It was just, you scared her, so off you go. Spent 5 days in jail. I knew, 'cause 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 I kne I needed to do something. So I began, I'm very stubborn in the fact that I don't like to let things defeat me. And I started everything. I wasn't really going the med route, but I did, I've done ketamine, I've done CBT, DBT, I've done ECT, TMS, all kinds of things just to try and help myself.
When you get to that point where you will do anything if it shows benefit, you will do anything. That's the point where you start climbing out of that hole.
Yes.
That's the important part. Like, some people will say, you know, they'll try something. Oh, that didn't work, so I guess I'm just stuck here. And they won't try anything else. Well, no, that didn't work for you, but there is something out there, and then you start searching for what will work.
I was almost pleading, not with myself. I was trying to plead with the world, essentially, or the psychological world, to be like, I can't just be a lost cause. This isn't how my story ends. You know, the story has been shit for, at the time, 38 years. It just, there has to be some type of happy spotlight somehow. And I was determined to do it. And it wasn't always pretty, but I went through it, and I found, you know, the things that would work here and there. Then you get insurance involved, and they stop covering this, and you got to transfer to this and try all of these different things. And, you know, so I would make headway, but it just wasn't what I would like. And ultimately that led me to, my wife and I were watching a documentary on Netflix called In Waves and War. Have you ever watched that?
Yes.
Okay. Because of that documentary, I got turned on to an organization called the Siren Project.
Yes. I know he was on the head of the Siren Project. He's a Navy SEAL, right?
No. So the head of it's two, a husband and wife firefighter team that founded it.
That's something different. Okay. Because there's one that was on Team Never Quit with Marcus Luttrell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so one of my coaches, now mentor, and, you know, I like to call him a friend now. Him and I have talked far after the retreat, but he was a Navy SEAL. So they do have a Navy SEAL part of that. But at any rate, we were watching that. I get turned on to the Siren Project because I had saw it in the credits. So it was just me paying attention to some mindless detail that my wife likes to point out that I do quite often. I blame the job for that, or just blame life in general. But I sent them an email, and it was one of those things where you're just like, this probably isn't even going to get answered, but I'm going to try it anyways, because that's where I'm at in my life, in my journey. And I'll be damned if that email wasn't answered almost instantly.
Really?
So I get selected to do this treatment down in Mexico, much like they did in that documentary. That the retreat that I did actually was filmed. It will be a documentary here, winter, maybe early part of 27. I'm not really sure. There's a lot that goes into that apparently, but I'm not a filmmaker. But it's going to showcase the first responder side instead of the military side of it. But I go down there and I did psilocybin and 5-MeO-DMT, or they call it the toad. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the best thing I've ever done. Because of that trip alone, I'm medication free still. I mean, I just went in January, so we're at 6 months, 5 months. But I don't have any plans on going back. I see my new psychologist every 3 weeks, I think, as a check-in, just to see how things are going. I mean,
well, they just on a federal level, they just started approving studies. Joe Rogan got into President Trump, and they're starting going down that route, and Bobby Kennedy's involved in it. And so there's hope for that stuff, because again, when you get to that point where you will do anything to heal. All you want to know is, are we working? Are we moving forward? Or are we moving back? Are they just going to keep prescribing us crap that's not working, that's numbing us, that's dulling us, giving us horrible side effects? Or are we going to start moving forward and trying to heal this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And Minnesota, within the last 3 or 4 weeks, just passed it also.
Yeah.
Well,
Psilocybin's set to become legal like marijuana very soon. I know it's in the process right now.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about that. And I actually just read something today that the VA for veterans is signing off on MDMA.
Yeah, so I've been offered all those things. I'm not a drug guy. I'm just not. So I choose not to. I try to live, but I know friends who have done it, and they swear by it. They swear by it.
Yeah, and I'm here to do the same thing. And I'm not a drug guy either. Thankfully, my growing up,
It's my archaic way of thinking, where MDMA is a drug, right?
right?
Ketamine is a drug. Psilocybin is a drug. So that's my archaic way of thinking. That's my that's my preconceived notion of what that is. And I know it's completely different. And I know the science behind it because I've read a lot about it. It regrows synapses in the brain and kind of reorganizes everything, kind of defragments your brain, kind of like EMDR. Somebody else needs it more than me. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, you certainly have to be prepared for it. It's not for the faint of heart by any means. But and I agree with you. I'm not being off of drugs, medications, whatever it is, how you want to call it, was a huge thing for me because I was never a drug seeker either. Growing up in that environment was helpful for me because it turned me off from that. It ruined me. So why in the world would I continue to do that? In this case, I decided to make that exception merely for the fact that I needed to do something different. And sometimes an algorithm change is what you need. And for me, it was kind of that medicine calling. Whether I wanted to believe in it at the time was one thing, but after going through it, I certainly do believe in it. And the other thing that kind of helped too was I had mentioned earlier that my dog was a service dog. And in Minnesota, we have an organization called Soldiers 6. And what they do is they offer service dogs to military and first responders dealing with their own mental health crisis and journeys. And they'll provide the dog if you don't have one. They pay for the first year of vet bills. They do all of the training at no cost to the recipient. Now you have to attend because that dog is for you. So they're training it to do everything that you need personally. So I had to actually sit down. They said, "What would you like this dog to do?" And so we came up with a whole plan. But so it was just those little things along the way that ultimately led to this last January, where I've gotten to it's almost freeing point of my life. And it's become such a healing journey for me. Even talking about it makes me happy, which is why I've decided to try and integrate, speaking and doing all these different things into my own life, because not only is it healing for me, but I'm hoping that it's healing for somebody else to be able to hear a real life version, because all too often we can go to trainings, much like I'm sure when you're in law enforcement, you go to a training, you walk into a room and you see a screen of, so-and-so, and then there's 18 letters behind their name that you have no fucking clue what they mean.
They haven't done it.
Right. And you're like, you have no clue about any of this. You can read a book and let AI teach you a bunch of stuff, but you've never lived it. And the one thing that you and I both know about type A personalities is I want the concrete proof. I want to hear from somebody that's done it. And not only do I want to hear from somebody that's done it, but I don't want to hear some jokester story that they got made fun of because of their hair color and that ruined their whole life.
Well, there's a difference between a conversation starter and a storyteller. right? A storyteller can make up whatever they want. A conversation starter is somebody who's actually lived it.
Yep.
So Dave, listen, we're coming to the end of this thing here, and can you give out your social media, where the audience can find you if they're so inclined to be interested in some of the things that you've experienced?
I voice my journey now, more so than I ever have, but D. Velasquez or Dave Velasquez, whichever you choose, but Facebook, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm still working on that part. That's a really foreign thing for me.
LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn has its own values, but it's different than social media. Like I said, we're coming to the end of this thing, and I always end the show the same way, okay? Because, again, as I said in the beginning, during the social media question, I do believe that suffering, pain, hardships, they are the greatest teacher we have in our lives. And if you look at your life from growing up in chaos with addiction and abuse and all these things to being the person that you needed the most and finding your purpose and finding your identity, to that being stripped away, to finally finding some sort of path to healing where you can actually help others, it had to teach you something. And if it didn't, boy, what a wasted opportunity. Right. So what do you think your suffering's taught you?
Well, suffering and pain go hand in hand in that they remind you that you're alive. And nobody wants to live and say that they didn't live at the end of it. Suffering and pain has really taught me that I can approach life with meaning. And I don't know if that meaning would have been possible without it. And so it's really taught me to lean into my struggles, and even the struggles that I know are inevitably bound to come. If you lean into that, so many great things happen because of that. And so that's the biggest takeaway, and it's been the biggest takeaway for me in my healing process. Once I started leaning into the suffering and the pain and accepting it, the most wonderful things that started to happen. I mean, up to and including me being here. So
we only connect to people when we show our vulnerabilities. That's the truth. So Dave, thank you so much for coming in. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate
can't wait to
you,
see
sir.
how far you're going to take this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Survival with Dave Velasquez. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Stability stunts a child's survival skills. Instability stunts a child's survival skills. Skills we learn as a child aren't always on purpose. We are always judged by our worst events. Sometimes we will just do anything to heal, but most importantly, suffering and pain remind us that we are still alive. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.